We're going to go ahead and get started with our sessions. There was a really important discussion happening in Ballroom 1 that ran through the break. But I think the discussion that happened there is key to what we'll be talking about for the remainder of the conference in this room. We're going to have 3 presentations this morning, and then we're going to break for lunch, and we'll start talking about language planning for our region, which is a really important step in trying to come together and figure out what we're all trying to do. I think there's lots of parts that are moving, and one of the goals is just to try and put all those parts together and unify with some of our language activities. So one of the things that should always be stressed and remembered is, if we talk about Southeast Alaska as a region, we're looking at 3 wonderful languages. And we should be working for all 3 of these languages. Tsimshian people, Haida people, Tlingit people. If we go back far enough, we have multilingual people. We knew many of these languages. We knew them well because we interacted with each other all the time. Our interactions were diverse and rich, and they brought us great wealth. So I'm really happy that Heather is here. She'll be our first presenter. She's an advocate for Tsimshian language and language programs. I'm really excited to hear the things that she has to say, and I've asked her to also talk a little bit this afternoon if she can when we do our regional reports, and we'll talk about what's happening with each language, with the communities that can be present and the organizations that can be present as well. So, Cheech.
Thank you, Lance. I want to stress that I'm just beginning on this language journey myself, so it's all totally new to me. I'm no way an expert, so I'm always down for constructive criticism. This project that I'm going to present to you today is an ethnohistory project that I started about a year ago. So to start off, I'd like to say Amakan Tle, Demelshkudish Noon, Heather Haven di Wayu, Tsimshian Laxsgiig di Hochsku, Ada Metlakatla di Wilwatku. Good morning. I'd like to tell you all who I am. My name is Heather Haven. I am Tsimshian of the Eagle clan, and I come from Metlakatla. I'd like to say a special direction to Lance and Alice for showing interest in my presentation and inviting me to the conference today. So my project title is an ethnohistory, Laxsgiig, an ethnohistory of the migration of the Tsimshian Eagle clan from British Columbia, Canada to Metlakatla, Alaska. This slide simply shows some old pictures of Metlakatla shortly after founding. My research focuses on the cultural changes experienced over the last century and a half by the Tsimshian Eagle clan due to colonization and their migration from British Columbia, Canada to Metlakatla, Alaska. This information is of particular importance to me, not only as an undergraduate anthropology student at UAS, but also as one who has lived the generationally cascading consequences. As my family ages, particularly my grandparents, and being mother to a 3-year-old son, I truly feel now more than ever is a time to gain a deeper understanding of my own personal identity and lineage. I started this research mainly because I felt the published persona of my people was very Western biased and simply omitted the Tsimshian of Alaska, only focusing on those still in British Columbia. The Tsimshian of Metlakatla have their own unique histories, deserving of more in-depth study. The Tsimshians originated in British Columbia, Canada around the Nass and Skeena rivers, and that's the area highlighted in the purple there. So by the mid-1800s, missionaries had taken post all over the area, and one of particular importance to this story is William Duncan. Duncan was a lay missionary of the Church of England who came to British Columbia in 1857. Duncan initially convinced a small group of Tsimshians from Port Simpson to move away from what he called the heathenism of Port Simpson to Old Metlakatla. But when he failed to see eye to eye with the church and his contemporaries, he began to conceive plans to relocate his perfect utopian society in the best interests of who he coined his own personal Indians. The Canadian government was trying to establish the village as a reservation and take ownership and control of the village. So Duncan used that gloomy fate to lure the Tsimshians to New Metlakatla with promises of freedom and unlimited opportunity, all the while having his own personal agenda at hand. Duncan did not want to have to answer to anyone, so he looked to the United States to help establish a safe refuge for his Indians. He sent a crew of Tsimshian men out looking for possible sites for their new home, and they came to Annette Island and decided they would have to look no further. Anthropologist J. Miller explains the notion of fleeing religious persecution being why the United States Congress granted Duncan and his followers the land that is now present-day Metlakatla, and in 1891 the community was set aside as the Annette Island Reserve. To this day, Metlakatla remains the only federal native reservation in the state of Alaska. Being a reserve makes it a federally governed organization with different rules and regulations from the rest of the state, and that has excluded the Tsimshians of Metlakatla from many of their neighbors. Organizations like the Alaska Native Brotherhood and such were created out of a need for Alaska Natives to mainly lobby for their rights, but the state laws wouldn't apply to the Tsimshians of Metlakatla, so they were not heavily involved in those early activism groups. They had their own exclusive rights to fish and surrounding waters. They also had their own cannery and sawmill, and when in operation, they were thought to be one of the most prosperous of Southeast Alaska's villages. On a recent trip to see Alaska Heritage Institute's archive, I found some cassette tapes documenting the battle of Tsimshians who were not living in Metlakatla, trying to amend the specific exclusion of the Tsimshians from the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act in the early 1970s. There was no support from the community of Metlakatla for Tsimshian inclusion in the bill because the town feared that they would lose their reservation status and VIA funding if they proceeded. Duncan promised great freedom for the Tsimshian in perfect utopian society of New Metlakatla. In a letter Viola Garfield wrote to William Bainham, speaking of Duncan, saying, "He usurped the rank, wealth, and power, and he destroyed the self-respect of 2 generations," end quote, of the Tsimshians of Metlakatla. Duncan's relocation of the Tsimshian led to them being much more acculturated than their Canadian relatives or any of their other neighboring tribes. I was able to travel to the University of Washington Archival Department, where Viola Garfield's collection is held. Garfield was a leading anthropologist on Tsimshian culture in the 20th century. Garfield started off as an elementary school teacher and got her first job in 1921 for the Bureau of Indian Affairs when they sent her to Metlakatla, Alaska. She only spent the school year there, but her curiosity and deep admiration for the Tsimshian people triggered her interest to becoming an anthropologist. She saw the children not competing for rewards and attention, and concluded the Tsimshian thought in terms of the group and not simply individualistic pursuits. Garfield's contribution to the research done at the University of Washington is attributed with helping make it the world-renowned center for Northwest Coast Indian cultural studies that it still remains today. Garfield's work focused on social structure among the Pacific Northwest cultures, with an emphasis on Tsimshian, both of British Columbia and Metlakatla. Throughout her work, she held a constant tone of realizing how important traditions, such as those held at potlatches, language, oral histories, narratives, and the arts were to a culture's social structure. Although Garfield's work is from the early 1900s, she addresses issues of how contact with Westerners had already altered aspects of Tsimshian society. All her writings include details on both pre-contact and post-contact conditions. She saw rapid cultural change and loss taking place for the Tsimshian, and she realized the dire importance in documenting all forms of traditional knowledge. Garfield's work essentially documents the demise of the Tsimshian people by addressing the effects of westernization, missionization, and modernization on their culture. She explains the strong bond between tribesmen as being their shared loyalty to their chief and all affairs surrounding him. By the time she did her research, there were already only a handful of Tsimshian chiefs left. Garfield saw common possession names and myth by individual houses as tying them together. With the presence of missionaries, it became illegal for the people to speak their own language and use their traditional names. Chiefs became less important, shamans were not allowed to practice customs, and potlatches were not allowed. Chieftainship and potlatches are the main roots of Tsimshian economy and structure. With the extinction of chieftainship lineage, adoptions to ensure continuation became less and less relevant. Adoption still takes place today, but it is more out of necessity from social issues like substance abuse and incarceration than for the mere propagation of clan inheritance. In Garfield's words, the Tsimshian developed their matrilineal institutions to the fullest, strengthening the basic structure with definite rules of transmission of lineage leadership and control of property, utilizing legends, potlatching, and art to validate prerogatives." End quote. The breakdown of the important aspects upholding Tsimshian social structure also include name-giving and matrilineal property and resource inheritance. Names are still passed on today, but the power, prestige, and inheritance factors associated with those names have long since been lost. Garfield gives accounts of house building changes before and post-contact. House building was a communal activity where matrilineal kin came together to help one another out and were reciprocated for their help by gift-giving and potlatches for the return in favor. With outside contact, houses started getting more elaborate, smaller, and more modern. This naturally made a shift from Tsimshian homes being extended family dwellings to single-family homes that are ever present today. Garfield saw more and more Tsimshians moving out of villages away from tradition to larger, more modern towns. This act of disconnect from traditional social and economic ties was highly frowned upon by elders and more traditionalists. This is direct evidence of the Tsimshian social system breaking down. Garfield's dissertation work was on Tsimshian marriage practices, and I obtained her original survey paperwork from the marriage studies. She asked questions like if the union was arranged or if it was actually for love. Even by this time, few tell of outside arrangement. The purpose of arranged marriages was to propagate clan survival, lineage inheritance, and to form ties with other tribesmen. As social and cultural disconnect continued, there was no need for arranged marriages. It was also customary for house members to make arrangement for wedding ceremonies, and many of Garfield's informants simply married at the courthouse, with little to no ceremony at all. Being a four-clan matrilineal system, wolf, eagle, killer whale, and raven, the traditional custom was for opposite clan members to marry. For example, eagle to raven, wolf to killer whale. Some of the traditional Tsimshian marriage rules included not marrying into one's own frailty. Garfield records information concerning changes regarding death and funeral customs from both before and after Western contact. As members disassociated with their houses and said responsibilities, there were white organizations who would step in and help with death and funeral arrangements and expenses. Today in Metlakatla, many old traditions are still being practiced, such as the opposite reciprocity involved in potlatches. I was just at a potlatch this last summer in Metlakatla thrown by the ravens, and therefore my family and all the other eagles did most of the cooking, serving, and cleaning. This is internationally known master carver Frank Perez. He's a Tsimshian Eagle clan member, and he really highlights the internal battle of most colonized indigenous people. Although he is an amazing artist, he struggles with severe alcoholism. Frank learned art from fellow Metlakatla, Alaskan Tsimshian Jack Hudson in the 1970s. He prides himself on being a traditional artist. I question how traditional a modern artist can be, and how truly important it is for an artist to identify themselves as being traditional. It was customary pre-colonization for an uncle to be a prominent teaching role in all areas of life, including art. So right there, that kind of discredits the notion of tradition, in Frank not learning from an uncle at an early age. He also apprenticed a young woman Tlingit artist, so one could argue that that's not very traditional either. All this aside, the focus is on his inner struggle with alcohol, highlighting the limits of traditional, modern, bilateral thinking. Garfield records Port Simpson carver Byron Paul in the 1930s, saying of his art form and designs, "I don't know what some of the old carvers would say about it." This shows there are already noticeable changes in art forms and practices, moving away from tradition by the 1930s. And so the larger picture is Frank Perez, and then the next picture is Jack Hudson, who Frank learned art from, and then the last one is Jack's son, and he's done a lot of work in museums, going in and learning artwork from collections, and that's just a bowl that Frank carved. Terry Burr is a Shinalic speaker and teacher. She says on a language speaker scale of 1 to 10, she is a 7, and hopes to get others to at least her level. Currently, there are not many of our own people who speak our language. and it is such an important cultural component for our people to thrive. Burr was part of a language project started in the 1990s, where two of her main Shinanic informants were the late Tsimshian Eagle elders, John and Wilbur Reese, and through their teachings, the language is able to be taught to future generations. Currently, Terry teaches, I think she tries to do them about once a month. She does, this is all in Ketchikan, she does little immersion courses, and I've been able to drop into a few of them, and they're really great. And it's been really nice because I take my 3-year-old son in, and he's able to pick up on words, and he even corrects my mother when she doesn't pronounce things properly. So language is very important. Just a couple phrases that I put up. And Dak Willawin means how are you? Am, good. Ashkadi am, not good. Sheep and Bet Moon, I love you. Am Hoopel, good night. Goya, what? In Sheepinich, I always have problems with this one, sorry. In Sheepinich means sweetheart, and Yanadol means go away. Elaine Sissy Guthrie is an Eagle Clan elder and cultural leader, and has been for the last 30 years, and she's played a big role in engaging and teaching the youth on various traditional ways in Metlakatla. She got her Tsimshian name of Little Sister from a friend, Barbara Fawcett's mother, because she was always around and fit in like a little sister. According to Northwest Coast anthropologist Jay Miller, reincarnates are dreamt about by a child's mother and our purpose of name-giving, to bring sacred histories, peoples, and events and places were interlinked through successive reincarnation. It seems that is not the case today, and could possibly be from the shift from shamanism practices to Christianity. Sissy is not only a clan elder, she is very active with her Presbyterian congregation. For me, that seems to walk in two worlds, one of fighting to keep traditional knowledge alive, while simultaneously embracing the forces that led to rapid cultural assimilation. There are some really great things going on in Metlakatla right now. Alaska Native Girls, or ANG, is a new nonprofit organization that was started by Tia Atkinson. She's an Eagle Clan member, and their mission statement is to empower Indigenous women by improving independence through promoting our inherent right to our culture, spiritual traditions, cultural enhancement, and seeking economic justice. Build self-esteem and self-confidence by encouraging our rights to self-determination as Indigenous people. Enhance leadership skills by addressing the special needs of the elders and children for the well-being of our people. And the top photo is of her giving a presentation. They meet, I think, bi-weekly in Metlakatla, and they do all sorts of wonderful things. They sent one of our young women to one of the native pageants at the Gathering of the Nations powwow this last year. And just this year, canoes paddled from Metlakatla, BC to Metlakatla, Alaska, with a Canadian group called Gathering Strength. This was just this last August for Founders Day. This is a journey that has not been made in over 120 years. And this is a program that is focused on youth and preventing suicide by showing them their inner strength, connecting them with their songs and the land through paddling together as one. Naomi Leask, you can see the food preparation picture up in the corner. She is the director of the Duncan Cottage Museum currently, and she holds language classes and food gathering classes to help promote Tsimshian traditional ecological knowledge and culture. It is through efforts like these that our people and culture will prosper and give back to the unity and community. And I just had to throw this into my presentation because I think that these are absolutely awesome. A local Tsimshian Bear Clan member, Walter Clark, spent hundreds of hours up on Yellow Hill in Metlakatla carving out these petroglyphs. I hope you can see them all. There's an eagle, a butterfly, and a killer whale with a cross, and he's got a raven and a wolf. So I think there are a total of 5 up there. Pretty amazing. And I threw this photo in just to show myself, my son, my mom, and my aunt, all Eagles, helping a living legacy thrive. Through my research, I would like to help shed light on the underrepresented people, Tsimshian people of Metlakatla, Alaska, along with learning my people's history. I hope this research will assist a community to see there is still much to learn from the past about who we are today and who we will teach our children to become. Language instructor Carrie Berg says the ancestors left messages in power in language to bring us strength and guidance. Frank Perez's apprentice, Tlingit Tagish artist Robin Lovelace is quoted saying, "I believe our ancestors left directions and hints in their stories and artwork as avenues to understand ourselves and our role in today's world." End quote. The focus for our people should not be on cultural loss, because we have seen dwelling on that leads to feelings of emptiness, anger, displacement, and blame, instead of trying to understand how our ancestors dealt with the issues and why they made the decisions they did, and how we are going to write our future and give ourselves and future generations something to identify as to be proud of and eager to learn. I think we are on a path of hope, and I will continue my research to better understand, to be able to give back to the community, my community of Metlakatla, Alaska. Special thank you to the Eureka Foundation at UAS, who helped me with some travel grant funding when I started my project, and Dan Monteith, who has been my mentor pretty much through this project, as well as Zach Jones at the Alaska Heritage Institute for he leads me in so many different directions just by spurring random conversations. So I really appreciate all of their help. Thank you.